New Zealanders have a say on this bill. I call the honourable member Charles Chauvel.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I've listened to this debate with great interest, and I thought the statement that the previous speaker made about setting the record straight was an apt one. I think it is time that the House actually had a look at some facts rather than concentrating on the sort of rhetoric that we've heard in this debate to date. And let me just point out a couple of those facts for the House. And I see that the Deputy Leader of the House is smiling. Well, I hope that by the end of her... Well, and she has a sunny disposition, just like the Junior Minister over there. But there we go. Let's hope that they're still smiling at the end of the debate. On the 19th of September, sir, during question time, in response to a primary question from the Right Honourable Winston Peters, the Prime Minister said this. Interestingly enough, although that member will know that because he was part of a government that had Charles Chauvel chair the Finance and Expenditure Committee in 2008, and what that select committee found was the following. It found that New Zealand's monetary policy approach is now standard amongst small, open, developed economies and is regarded as world's best practice. And the Prime Minister repeated the burden of that statement on the 26th of September in response to questions from Dr Russell Norman. He said that I had chaired the Finance and Expenditure Committee as part of the quote-unquote old government in 2008, and what it found was that we had the world's best practice. Well, sir, as seems to be the case time and time again, John Key hadn't read his papers. Because what actually happened in respect of that committee is as follows, sir. We heard 92 submissions from a number of distinguished experts in this field, from Germany, Austria, New Zealand and other countries. We received very good advice, I think, from the Treasury. We had independent advisors, including Dr Stephen Grenville and Dr Dean Parham from the Australian Productivity Commission. And what's most interesting, sir, is the composition of the committee, because we produced a unanimous report. And I just want to remind the House who was on that committee. Although I chaired it, there was the Honourable Bill English, there was Craig Foss, there was Hone Harawira, there was Rodney Hyde from the ACT Party, there was, yes, we remember him well, Dr the Honourable Lockwood Smith was the Deputy Chairperson, we had Chris Tremaine, and we had representatives from United Future and New Zealand First. And, sir, that was a committee from across the Parliament that carefully considered the evidence. And quite contrary to the claims of the Prime Minister in question time last month, this was the finding of that committee. This was the key finding, and I'm going to read it in full. While monetary policy has largely succeeded in delivering low inflation, despite challenges, the long-run economic performance of New Zealand remains less encouraging. GDP growth per capita has not been strong enough to close the gap with other OECD countries. The stock of capital equipment per worker remains low, and the country's export performance appears disappointing. It is also a concern that recent imbalances in the economy at present have manifested in a high exchange rate. That, sir, is the so-called ringing endorsement that the Prime Minister's speechwriters and note-takers told him was what we had said in our report on monetary policy. But never mind that. We know he never reads anything. We know he doesn't have his hand on the tiller. He simply does what his advisers say and reads out what they suggest that he read. Those are the problems, sir, that need to be addressed. Those are the sort of problems that sending this bill to a select committee would allow to be debated, because they are the issues that need to be confronted and facing us in our economy at the moment. And that is why we support sending this rather modest bill, the sort of bill that would put in place, for example, the Singaporean approach in the New Zealand economy, to the Select Committee for careful submission. That, sir, is what this legislation deserves, not the sterile ideological rhetoric that we've heard tonight from Bill English, even though he sat on the committee and joined in the endorsement that I've read out, and from Todd McClay and from John Banks and others. And I want to commend the Right Honourable Winston Peters for his initiative in introducing this bill, Mr Speaker, and I'm proud as a Labour member to stand with my colleagues, with the Greens, with Mana and others, in supporting this very sensible bill.
I call the Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I welcome